12 of the biggest songs in R&B and soul history were never supposed to matter. They were throwaways, studio jokes, pranks on a record label, comebacks to a heckler in the crowd. Nobody in that room thought they were making history. By the time we hit number 1, you'll never hear these songs the same way again. Number 12, Brick House by the Commodores. In the mid-1970s, the Commodores were known as a horn-driven funk band, built around tight arrangements and serious musicianship, not comedy. So when bassist Ronald LaPreed reportedly started fooling around with a loose, greasy bass line in the studio, it wasn't treated as a real song idea. It was a goof, a jam, something the band ran through almost as a joke while they waited to get to the songs actually scheduled for the session. Lionel Richie has said the band would jam on grooves like this constantly, most of which went nowhere, and this one almost did too. The lyrics reportedly grew out of the band teasing each other about women they knew, tossing out lines about a woman who was stacked and confident, half showing off, half laughing at themselves. Someone threw out the phrase, "She's a brick house," slang for a woman built strong and unshakable, and the room lit up. What started as a locker room joke turned into one of the most recognizable bass lines in funk history. When Motown heard the finished track, nobody was laughing anymore. Brick House became a monster hit, climbing into the pop and R&B top 5 and turning into a permanent wedding reception and stadium anthem that still gets funk bands paid decades later. The Commodores, a band built on ballads like Easy and 3 Times a Lady, suddenly had a rowdy, sweat-soaked funk classic that outlived almost everything else in their catalog. It's still sampled, still covered, still blasted at every cookout in America. The song's loose, jam-first origin is a big part of why it still feels so alive on record, built less like a composed piece and more like a party, captured on tape mid-laugh. Lionel Richie has often credited that jam-first, structure-later approach as the secret behind several of the Commodore's biggest grooves, with Brick House simply being the one where the joke never stopped being funny enough to keep. A studio joke about a confident woman turned into one of the most enduring grooves R&B ever produced. And if you think a bassline joke turning into a classic is wild, wait until you hear how a children's song became one of the defining disco soul records of its era, written for a completely different singer who never got the chance to record it. Number 11, Ring My Bell by Anita Ward. Ring My Bell sounds like a grown, flirtatious disco anthem. It was not written that way. Songwriter and producer Frederick Knight originally wrote the song for a teenage R&B singer named Stacy Lattisaw, and in that version, the bell was innocent, a cute, PG concept about a girl waiting by the phone for her boyfriend to call. It was closer to a novelty tune for a kid act than a dance floor record. Something Knight reportedly worked up almost as a light-hearted afterthought rather than a serious single. When Lattisaw's label passed on it, Knight didn't scrap the song. He reworked it for a different artist entirely. Anita Ward, a schoolteacher with a sweet, high voice who wasn't part of the disco scene at all. With Ward singing it as an adult with a knowing, sultry delivery, the same innocent lyrics suddenly read completely differently. And the song's meaning flipped from cute to unmistakably grown without changing a word. Released in 1979, Ring My Bell exploded, hitting number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and topping the R&B charts as well, becoming one of the biggest disco soul crossover hits of the entire era. Ward herself has said in later interviews that she recorded her vocal in a single afternoon session, never imagining the song would define her career, let alone become a permanent fixture at weddings and parties decades later. The track's stripped-down, bell-tone synth hook almost toy-like in its simplicity, is part of what gave the innocent song for grown folks concept its punch, turning a lightweight idea into something instantly hypnotic on the dance floor. A song built as a lightweight kids concept, tossed off almost as a throwaway idea for a teenager, ended up as one of the most instantly recognizable disco records ever made, propelled entirely by an adult voice, reinterpreting words that were never written for her. It's proof that the same lyrics can be a joke or a hit, depending entirely on who's singing them and how seriously the world decides to take it. And speaking of songs nobody meant to keep, our next entry started as a piece of studio venting after a bouncer wouldn't let two of the biggest producers in music history into their own party.
Here's something most people don't realize. Only about 10% of you watching will hit subscribe. The other 90% just watch and move on. You made it this far, so you're clearly not most people. Hit subscribe. Back to the countdown.
Number 10. Le Freak by Chic. On New Year's Eve 1977, Chic's Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards tried to get into Studio 54, the most famous nightclub in New York, on the personal invitation of Grace Jones. Jones never made it to the door to vouch for them, and the doorman turned Rodgers and Edwards away like they were nobody. Furious and humiliated, the two musicians went back to Rodgers' apartment, picked up their instruments, and started venting through their instruments instead of their mouths, jamming out their anger as a kind of inside joke aimed squarely at the club that had just embarrassed them. According to Rodgers, the original chorus wasn't "freak out," it was a much more explicit phrase directed at Studio 54, something they never intended anyone outside that room to hear. The riff, though, was undeniable, tight, funky, and instantly catchy.
Just come on down.
And the joke session slowly turned into a real arrangement. When it came time to actually release the track, the explicit chorus got swapped for the club-friendly "freak out." And the venting session became Le Freak. The satire barely mattered by the time it hit the radio, because the groove alone was enough to make it one of the biggest disco singles ever recorded, eventually becoming Atlantic Records' best-selling single of all time up to that point. The two men who got denied entry to the hottest club in New York ended up writing the song that dominated it. Rodgers has said in interviews that being turned away that night remains one of the strangest ironies of his career, watching the club that snubbed him build part of its own legend around a song originally written to insult it. Le Freak went on to become one of the best-selling singles in the history of Atlantic Records, topping the Billboard Hot 100 not once but twice, an almost unheard-of feat for the era.
All around.
A joke born out of pure spite turned into a genre-defining anthem that outlasted the club that inspired it. But if you think getting rejected from a nightclub led to a legendary record, wait until you hear about the song that started as a heckler's insult shouted from the crowd.
Just come on down.
Number 9. Play That Funky Music by Wild Cherry. Wild Cherry was a rock band from Ohio, struggling to find an audience in the mid-1970s, playing bar gigs where crowds increasingly wanted disco and funk instead of guitar rock. According to the band, at one particular gig, a member of the crowd yelled out at them, half mocking, half demanding, "Play that funky music, white boy." A jab at the fact that a white rock band was playing music that wasn't landing with a funk-hungry room. Instead of getting defensive, guitarist and singer Rob Parisi reportedly turned the insult into a joke among the band, and then, almost on a dare, into an actual song, using the heckler's exact words as the title and hook. What started as band members laughing off a crowd's jab turned into a genuine funk rock hybrid that leaned directly into the joke instead of running from it. Released in 1976, Play That Funky Music shot to number 1 on both the pop chart and notably the R&B chart, an almost unheard of crossover for a rock band at the time, proving the joke had accidentally captured something real about the moment music was in. The song became one of the most sampled and covered tracks of the disco era, showing up in movies, commercials, and party playlists for decades afterward. Parisi later admitted he almost talked himself out of using the heckler's exact words, worried the title sounded too much like a punchline rather than something radio would ever take seriously. And the band nearly rewrote it into something safer before deciding to lean all the way into the joke instead. It would remain Wild Cherry's only major hit, a single band, a single insult, and a single decision to stop being embarrassed by it.
It's so much better.
A single sarcastic insult, shouted from a bar crowd, turned into a permanent piece of the American musical landscape, immortalizing the very heckle that was meant to embarrass the band in the first place. And our next entry took an even stranger path, starting as an off-the-cuff studio ad-lib session that almost didn't make it onto the record at all. Number 8, Atomic Dog by George Clinton. By the early 1980s, George Clinton was already a funk legend, but Atomic Dog didn't come together like a typical planned single. According to Clinton and his collaborators, much of the track was built in the studio almost spontaneously, with Clinton ad-libbing over a loose, shifting groove rather than working from a finished set of lyrics. The now iconic "Bow Wow Wow, Yippee Yo, Yippee Yay" hook reportedly emerged out of Clinton just playing around with sounds and phrases in the vocal booth, barking and riffing almost as a joke rather than crafting a calculated hook. Engineers and band members have described the sessions as loose and playful, with Clinton building the track's structure on the fly, stitching together fragments that felt more like studio horseplay than a finished composition. Nobody involved treated it like it was destined to be a signature song. It was one experimental idea among many being tried that week. When Atomic Dog was released in 1982, it became one of the defining records of Clinton's career, hitting number 1 on the R&B charts and becoming a foundational text for funk and later hip-hop. Its bass line and vocal hooks have been sampled in hundreds of songs since, from Snoop Dogg to countless others, making it one of the most sampled tracks in music history. Snoop Dogg has cited Atomic Dog directly as an influence on his own laid-back, half-spoken vocal style. And West Coast hip-hop as a whole leaned heavily on the track's loose, conversational groove in the years that followed. What began as barking and riffing in a vocal booth quietly became one of the load-bearing pillars of an entire genre that hadn't fully arrived yet. A song built almost entirely out of studio improvisation and playful ad-libbing became one of the most influential funk records ever made, its DNA embedded in decades of music that followed. And if a barking ad-lib session can become a foundational hip-hop sample source, wait until you hear how a lo-fi demo that Prince almost gave away to another artist became one of his signature hits. Number 7. Kiss by Prince Kiss started life as a stripped-down acoustic demo that Prince reportedly wrote quickly and somewhat casually, intending to give it away to a side project rather than keep it for himself. The original version was written for a band called Maserati, a group Prince was producing. And by most accounts, he handed it over almost as a throwaway, not treating it as one of his priority songs. Maserati took the bare-bones demo and reworked it, adding their own arrangement and vocal touches, turning Prince's loose sketch into something fuller. When Prince heard what they'd done with it, he reportedly loved the direction so much that he took the song back for himself, stripped it down even further, and reworked it into the minimalist, funk guitar-driven version the world eventually heard. What began as a quick, almost dismissive gift to another act became one of Prince's signature songs. An odd, sparse, falsetto-driven track that sounded like almost nothing else on the radio in 1986. Kiss hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and topped the R&B charts as well, later winning a Grammy and becoming one of the most instantly recognizable guitar riffs in pop and R&B history. Maserati themselves have spoken about the strange feeling of handing their reworked version back to Prince, watching him take their contribution and strip it down even further, then walk away with what became one of the signature songs of his career. It remains one of the clearest examples in music history of an artist's throwaway idea outshining almost everything he treated as a priority that same year. A song Prince almost handed off without a second thought became one of the defining records of his entire catalogue. Proof that even his cast-offs were stronger than most artists' best material. Coming up, we've got a song built entirely out of a pizza parlor freestyle session that was never supposed to leave the room, let alone define an entire genre. Number 6, Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang. Rapper's Delight sits at the crossover point between R&B, funk, and the birth of hip-hop, and its origin story is almost impossibly casual for a song that changed music history. According to widely reported accounts, Sylvia Robinson of Sugar Hill Records assembled the Sugar Hill Gang almost on the spot, pulling together rappers, including one reportedly recruited while working at a pizza parlor, who had never performed together as a group before. The lyrics themselves were largely improvised and borrowed, stitched together from party rhymes and freestyles that were circulating informally at the time, rather than carefully written from scratch. A patchwork built more like an inside joke among friends than a serious studio composition. The track was built over an interpolation of Chic's Good Times bass line, recorded in what by most accounts was a quick, almost improvised session, rather than a painstakingly planned production. Nobody involved expected the 15-minute track to become a defining record. If anything, its length and loose construction made it seem like an unreleasable novelty. Instead, Rapper's Delight became the first hip-hop single to break into the Billboard Top 40, introducing rap music to a mainstream audience and directly influencing the R&B and soul productions that followed for decades. It reportedly sold up to 2 million copies in the United States alone, an almost unimaginable number for a genre that, up to that point, barely existed as a commercial category. Radio programmers who had no framework for how to classify it simply filed it next to the funk and soul records it borrowed its groove from, which is exactly how a 15-minute inside joke ended up sitting on the same charts as Michael Jackson and Donna Summer. A song thrown together out of borrowed rhymes and a pizza parlor recruit became the single most important bridge record between old-school funk and the genre that would eventually reshape all of popular music. And our next entry is even older, a joke dance craze from a forgotten B-side that somehow became one of the biggest dance movements in American history. Number 5, The Twist by Chubby Checker. Originally Hank Ballard before Chubby Checker turned it into a phenomenon, The Twist was written by Hank Ballard as little more than a throwaway B-side, tucked onto the back of a Midnighters single in 1959, without much expectation attached to it. Ballard reportedly wrote the song quickly, almost as a light-hearted afterthought, compared to the A-side track the label was actually promoting. Describing a simple dance move, rather than crafting a serious single, it barely registered on release, overshadowed completely by its own A-side, and treated by the label as filler, rather than a potential hit. When Dick Clark's team noticed teenagers dancing to it on American Bandstand, they didn't bring back Ballard's version. They had a young singer named Chubby Checker record a near-identical cover. And that cover, not the original, became the cultural explosion. The twist hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, not once but twice, in 1960 and again in 1962. Becoming the only song in the rock era to top the chart in 2 separate chart runs, and it sparked an entire dance craze that swept through American culture, spawning countless follow-up twist songs and dance crazes for years afterward. Ballard reportedly held no grudge over losing the spotlight to Checker's version, later joking that he'd written plenty of throwaway B-sides in his career and had no idea which one, if any, would ever take off. The fact that it was a filler track, built almost as an afterthought, is part of why its explosion still stands out as one of the strangest chart stories in American pop history. A song that started as B-side filler, barely taken seriously by the artist who wrote it, ended up as one of the most culturally significant singles of the 20th century. Immortalized by a singer who wasn't even the one who wrote it. Coming up, a song built around a joke concept so over the top that some of the biggest singers in music turned it down before it became a soul disco anthem. Number 4. It's Raining Men by the Weather Girls. It's Raining Men was born out of a concept so exaggerated it was reportedly treated as something close to a joke by the songwriters themselves. A fantasy where a weather goddess causes it to literally rain attractive men from the sky. Written by Paul Jabara and Paul Schaefer, the song was so campy and over the top that, according to widely reported accounts, it was turned down by a string of major stars, including names as big as Diana Ross, Cher, and Barbra Streisand, all of whom reportedly passed on the concept as too silly or too risky to record. For years, the song floated around as an industry punchline, a demo everyone had heard of, but nobody wanted to be the one to release. It eventually landed with Martha Wash and Izora Armstead, 2 powerhouse gospel-trained vocalists performing as the Weather Girls, who took the campy premise and delivered it with full, unapologetic, soul-belted conviction instead of treating it as a novelty. That commitment changed everything. Released in 1982, It's Raining Men became a massive R&B and dance chart hit. And over the following decades, it grew into one of the most enduring gay anthem and soul pop staples in music. Still played at parties, weddings, and prides around the world more than 40 years later. Martha Wash has said in interviews that she and Izora Armstead approached the recording the same way they approached gospel music growing up, with full commitment and zero irony, which is precisely what turned a rejected novelty concept into something that actually sounded triumphant instead of campy. The superstars who passed on it got to watch 2 lesser-known singers turn their leftover joke into a signature record bigger than most of those stars' own catalogs. A concept multiple superstars considered beneath them turned into one of the most joyfully over-the-top and beloved records in R&B adjacent dance music history. Carried entirely by 2 singers willing to take the joke completely seriously. Coming up, a live ad-lib that started as a preacher-style call-and-response bit and turned into one of the most covered songs in American music. Number 3. Shout by the Isley Brothers. Long before it was a studio recording, Shout reportedly began as something closer to a live improvisation. A call-and-response bit the Isley Brothers worked up on stage, built on the gospel structure they grew up on in church. According to the group, the song grew out of them playfully riffing off crowd energy during live performances, almost teasing the audience the way a preacher works a congregation, building "hey hey" call-and-response chants that weren't part of any written setlist. It reportedly wasn't originally treated as a real, releasable song. It was closer to a bit the brothers used to fire up a room, something semi-improvised that kept growing, because audiences kept reacting to it so strongly. Eventually, the energy of those live moments got captured and structured into an actual studio recording, released in 1959. And while it wasn't an enormous hit on its initial release, it became one of the most influential and heavily covered songs in American music history over the following decades. Otis Day and the Knights version in the film Animal House introduced it to a whole new generation, and the song has since become a permanent fixture at weddings, sporting events, and celebrations of every kind. Its call and response structure so ingrained in American culture that most people who shout along have no idea it started as an on-stage improvisation between brothers riffing off a crowd. The song's gradual build, quiet to loud, verse to explosion, mirrors the exact structure of the live bits it grew out of, which is part of why it still works so well as a crowd participation anthem more than 60 years later. Few songs in American music have traveled as far from their original, unplanned form while keeping the same core energy that made a crowd react to it in the first place. A stage bit built out of gospel call and response energy became one of the most durable, most covered records in soul music history. And now, the song one of its own singers called Stupid to her bandmates' faces, right before it hit #1 and saved a movie from getting shelved. Number 2, Car Wash, by Rose Royce Norman Whitfield. The legendary former Motown producer behind hits for The Temptations had been asked to write the soundtrack for a low-budget 1976 comedy called Car Wash, and by most accounts, he didn't even want the job at first. According to the film's own history, Whitfield struggled to come up with a theme song until inspiration reportedly struck him one night while he was eating a bucket of fried chicken and watching a basketball game. He grabbed the nearest thing he could write on, the paper chicken bag, and scribbled out the lyrics to what would become Car Wash right there on the spot. When he brought the song to his group Rose Royce, lead singer Gwen Dickey has said in interviews that she and her bandmates thought the whole idea was ridiculous, telling each other something close to, "This will never be a hit, we're literally singing about a car wash." To them, it read like a joke of a song. A corny novelty tune about washing cars, not a serious single with any shot at radio. Whitfield reportedly wasn't fazed by their doubts at all, telling Dickey directly that she wouldn't be laughing once it became a hit. He turned out to be right. Released in September 1976, Car Wash shot to #1 on both the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B chart, sold over 2 million copies, and won a Grammy for its soundtrack. The song became so central to the film's success that, according to reports at the time, it helped convince the studio to actually release the movie instead of letting it sit on the shelf. Decades later, it's still one of the most sampled, most covered records in funk history, revived again in 2004 by Christina Aguilera and Missy Elliott for the animated film Shark Tale. Dickey has said in later interviews that she still can't quite believe a song she once considered embarrassing became the one thing she's most recognized for, decades after she assumed it would come and go with the movie itself. A song written on a fried chicken bag, dismissed by its own singer as something nobody would take seriously, ended up saving a movie and becoming one of the defining disco-funk records of its decade. And now, the single most legendary entry on this list, a backstage joke too filthy to ever release, cleaned up at the last minute into the song that basically invented rock and roll. Number 1, Tutti Frutti, by Little Richard. Before it was one of the most important songs in the history of American music, Tutti Frutti was reportedly a raunchy, off-color chant Little Richard used to blow off steam backstage and between sets, built around a lyric far too explicit for radio, referencing sex in blunt, joking terms rather than anything resembling a polished song. It wasn't written to be recorded. It was closer to an inside joke Richard performed for other musicians to make them laugh, a release valve after grinding through polite club sets that didn't let him cut loose. When producer Robert "Bumps" Blackwell heard Richard messing around with the chant during a studio break in 1955, He immediately recognized there was something enormous buried inside the raw energy, even if the actual lyrics were completely unusable. Songwriter Dorothy Labostri was reportedly brought in on short notice to rewrite the words into something releasable, reportedly finishing new, radio-safe lyrics in a matter of minutes, while Richard, embarrassed, could barely bring himself to sing the cleaned-up version facing the studio wall. What survived from the original joke wasn't the words, it was the explosive, unhinged energy behind a wop bop a loo bop, a lop bam boom, a nonsense chant that became one of the most recognizable vocal hooks ever recorded. Tutti Frutti is now widely credited as one of the founding records of rock and roll. Its raw, unfiltered energy directly influencing the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and virtually every rock and R&B act that came after it. Paul McCartney has said that hearing Little Richard's original vocal as a teenager changed how he understood what a voice could do on a record. And John Lennon reportedly modeled some of his own early screaming vocal style directly on Richard's delivery. Little Richard himself spent decades afterwards saying, half proud and half amazed, that the song the world now treats as sacred started out as something he never expected anyone outside a backstage room to hear. A backstage joke too explicit to ever be released became, in cleaned-up form, one of the most important 3 minutes of music ever recorded, and the single record most historians point to as the true starting gun for rock and roll itself. 12 songs. 12 inside jokes, throwaways, and dares nobody meant to keep. Every one of them was written by someone who had no idea they were about to change music forever. Which might be the most important lesson in this entire list. Sometimes the song you're not taking seriously is the one the world can't stop playing.